All right, welcome back to the First-Time Homebuyer Survival Series. This is part 18. So we finally figured out the price that we want to offer. It makes sense. Now we have to talk about the next aspect of the offer, which is the deposit. This is an area where a lot of buyers get confused, both first-time buyers and otherwise. So it's worth making a dedicated video on this topic, especially when it comes to the difference between the down payment and the deposit. So let's clear that up. So when you put an offer on a home in Ontario, there is usually a deposit that is required as part of the offer. And once the seller accepts your offer, so we put in our offer, we have our price, we went back and forth a few times. Once the offer is actually accepted by all parties, that deposit is typically due within 24 to 48 hours. The exact timing will depend on how the offer is written. And if the offer is accepted on a weekend, it's usually due to the next business day because you need to be able to go to the bank and get the money and do everything. The key point is once your offer is accepted, you need to have that money ready to go. So you have to be careful. You want to make sure that when you're putting in an offer, you can actually fulfill on submitting that deposit right away. Otherwise, the deal could fall apart. In most cases, it's about 5% of the purchase price that you're going to be putting for the deposit. So if we use the example that we're working with, let's say you put your offer in at $560, that got accepted, and a 5% deposit on that would be about $28,000. This is very common in Ontario. Now, how does the deposit differ from the down payment? Because they're very similar, but they're not exactly the same thing. And this is where people often get mixed up. The deposit is a show of good faith from you as the buyer to the seller. It shows them that you're serious about the deal. Now, that deposit will go towards your purchase price and your down payment. It's not in addition to your down payment. So let's say if you're doing 5% down, you're not doing 5% down plus 5% of the deposit. That 5% you put as the deposit will go towards the total purchase price. When your lawyer does the final numbers before closing, the deposit you already paid is credited towards what you owe to buy the house. Now, why it exists, it's basically just collateral for the seller. So if the deal becomes firm, meaning that all the conditions are waived and the closing date is set. So we'll talk about conditions in a later video and what that means. But when the deal becomes firm and you as the buyer walk away, there are legal consequences. One of those consequences is losing your deposit. This is why sellers care about it. It gives them protection. Now, this is very important. You don't lose the deposit if you put in a conditional offer and it falls apart properly within your conditional period. You get your full deposit back. You don't get any deductions on it. You don't lose any of the amount. You get the full amount sent back to you. If the deal becomes firm and you as the buyer fail to uphold your end of the agreement, that is when your deposit is at risk. Now, another thing to keep in mind, very important, the deposit is not given directly to the seller. So there's no chance that it's going to just disappear on you and that they're going to go to the casino and spend it all before the deal becomes firm. It's held in trust by the listing brokerage in their trust account. So that money cannot be spent. It has to stay there. And those real estate trust accounts, they're regulated and they're insured. So you don't have to worry about it disappearing. So the deposit is important because if you have the financial ability to do it, if you can put a larger deposit, it can make your offer stronger. The deposit does not change your purchase price. So if the previous example, if we go from $28,000 and you put your deposit up to $50,000, that $50,000 is just being credited towards your purchase price of $560. The $560 that we mentioned doesn't change at all. What it's doing is simply just showing that you have a stronger commitment. So in a multiple offer situation, if everything else being equal, one offer has a higher deposit, sellers will often choose that one because it shows that the buyers have more skin in the game. It signals lower risk for them. So key takeaways that you want to remember, deposit is usually about 5% of the purchase price. It's due within 24 to 48 hours after acceptance. So you have to have the money ready to go to be able to submit it to them after your offer is accepted. You don't want to have to worry about going and selling off a bunch of stocks or anything like that. You need to have that money ready to go when you're offering on a home. It's different from the down payment, but it goes towards it. It's held in trust by the listing brokers. You don't have to worry about it being deducted or anything, and a higher deposit can strengthen your offer. All right, so the deposit is a very important part of the offer process. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the closing date, so stay tuned for that. And if you want the PDF version of the first-time buyer guide, that will be down in the description as well. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.